Hello, everyone, and welcome to Generally Casual, the place where you casually learn about anything and everything. I'm your co-host, Michael, and my sandy co-hosts next to me are Michael and Corey. I mean, Richard and Corey.
I was forgotten.
I'm also Michael.
We're all Michael. Jinx, you
In fact, nope. In fact, all of our names today are Paul. We are all Paul.
Paul what, Richard?
I don't remember their last name
Yeah,
at all.
okay. So
Just
we...
Paul.
In a kind of shout out to the reboot of Dune coming out and how excited I am about the series, I suggested these fellow
Idiots.
idiots.
Yeah.
These fellow people of the sand to let's dive into this movie, and
Dune.
let's dive into it first with the original 1984
Dune.
Let's dive into this great movie. Let's watch the old one.
Yeah, which actually it's kind of like a cult movie in essence, but not like a good cult movie.
No,
Well,
it's
to be
like,
fair, David Lynch is like the culty director.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing is like
Twin
when
Peaks,
I watched the
super
original
culty.
Dune and I read the book, I was like, oh yeah, I love this movie because it's very unique. It's kind of like watching Star Wars for the first time, where you just get like head first into this universe, and it's really apparent by watching the movie that the author has his own like framework in mind when building it.
But
like,
Wait, the author or the... You're talking about for the movie itself?
No, he's
No,
talking
no,
about
I'm
the
just-
book.
Oh,
I mean,
you're talking
even
about
the
book.
movie,
Like the universe.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, David Lynch isn't the one who made Dune.
No. It was the author of the book.
Yeah. WBG Michelman.
But-
anyway,
Yep, that's the author.
It's very apparent. Like, it has the same thematic like feel as Star Wars. We're going like right when you watch the first movie, you're like, oh, I'm in this specific universe. The person has like, if you talk to the person who made Star Wars or the person who made Dune, you could talk to them for hours, and they'll have ideas upon ideas about what this universe is, what is in this universe. And I feel like the same thing with Dune is like when you watch it, you're like, oh, you could talk to this person for hours and they'll be like, oh yeah, these are what the worms are called, and these are other planets in the area. Also, this is what the Galactic Emperor is called. Let me like get into it with you, and you're like, okay, nerd. Calm.
Spoiler alert, there's worms.
The movie.
It's Tremors.
Before we move on, like I feel like it was done well and poorly at the same time. In my brain,
Polly.
though, I was not trying to be that person. But
Normally, that's you.
hey, I don't know what you're talking about.
Corey let out an insane scream earlier.
But I feel like you're 100% right, Michael. Like it has all that like subtext and all the history to it, and it feels like it's a living, breathing universe. But sadly, the movie, it feels like it was done really well, but poorly at the same time, in a way that like they wrote it all out and all that history and subplot and subtext out in hieroglyphs, and they just had someone that randomly smudged some of it out.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's
like you're getting a big like
overwhelming.
tease of a lot of story, but there are very core pieces or things that link pieces together missing.
Yeah, and that's because of that movie that inspired us to get this idea for this podcast, to have Richard explain what the hey this is all about. But before we get to there,
Yeah.
leading into this conversation, what is your experience with Dune in the first place? So I can start. I've watched the reboot, I've watched the old movie, and I've read the book, and I think I've read past the original book as well. I think there's a couple books out that kind of...
I think there was a trilogy or something, right?
I've read 2 of them, and I've also reread that book a couple times. So,
Atreides. I remember it.
okay. Yeah, we don't know why he said that or what that applies to, but we'll get into that.
Oh yeah, that's true.
As these guys have said, Dune essentially is Game of Thrones Star Wars. Or what was it? Was it Game of Thrones?
Sci-fi Game of Thrones.
Yeah, sci-fi
on
Game
a
of Thrones.
desert planet.
It's basically that, because it's like, well, I can't explain because Richard has to explain.
Yeah,
But
I get to
Corey,
explain.
what's your experience with Dune?
So a very long time ago, I read the first book
In a place
and
far, far away.
forgot a lot of it because
It
I
is.
tried.
It is very far away.
Yeah, it's in Australia.
Yeah.
Are you me, Michael? What's going on? What? But I read it probably earlier than I should have, so I didn't really understand a lot of it.
A lot of big
and
words.
because of that, I didn't I don't have great recall about the book itself. Like, I have bits and pieces, and the movie kind of helps link those bits and pieces a bit better. But there are still significant portions of the book that are missing from my memory because the movie did not fill that in.
And that's the weird thing is that, like, while we were just describing the movie, it almost felt like those movies that are like straight from book to movie. And
that's what the first thing I said.
Yeah, and there's like Harry Potter is a great example of how to do that right. Whether you like the movies or not,
it's one of the movie.
The first movie's done
is exactly kind of how Dune, the 1984 movie. It's if we took the book and we basically took the biggest plot points out of it and tried to cram it into less than a 2.5-hour movie.
Well, and there's edits with that movie too that were like, here's more stuff from the book.
Yeah,
but Philosopher's Stone is better because it doesn't have internal dialogue that they're speaking out.
I get that.
Whispering it.
But my frame of reference is based off of just watching that movie.
I'm not comparing the movies, like saying one's better than the other. I mean, Harry Potter's better. But I mean...
I just wanted some way to get that off my conscience, is that this 1984 version of Dune, the movie has internal monologue. And
I would say maybe that's
an
because...
external monologue.
That might be why they're doing the reboot, is because it needed more than one movie to explain itself. Maybe, like... that you just can't cram all of Dune into one movie, or maybe it's just because Harry Potter's easier to translate because there's less going on.
Book.
Yeah. I mean, there's other examples of it out there, but like Dune really is overwhelmingly packed with things that they just like.
There's a lot of lack of explanation.
Yeah, you jumped into a pool and then just drowned. Yeah. Like that's essentially what it is. You jump in the pool and you're like, the pool's rising above me. What's going on? And you just get sunk into it. And
there's a lot of that.
Exactly.
There's a lot of that.
So, Richard, you're our expert on Dune. So why don't you explain us the...
before I do that, I need to go over my history with Dune.
Oh, yes. I skipped that because...
And the reason why I'm explaining this movie. Because my expertise in this is just watching the movie once.
Yep.
So I get to explain the plot with
also
just watching the movie.
Corey, you've watched the movie one time.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
But he's read the book too.
Yeah,
so,
I have not read the book.
Not well though.
I've not read he poorly read. He put some peanut butter stains on the pages and just skipped those parts.
No.
No, I didn't eat peanut butter when I was a kid.
No, I did.
I ate Vegemite.
I like Vegemite better.
See, I knew. So, Richard, don't try to dive too much into the details, but like give us a nice brief explanation of what this movie is from the beginning.
Okay.
And don't miss details.
I'll miss the details, but don't miss the details.
Yeah, exactly.
So
he said keep it brief, but don't miss
I will say that one of the strangest things about the beginning of this movie
I did put that on there.
is that there's literally a lady talking head to explain the backstory of what's about to happen in the movie. And doesn't explain anything really at all. There's planets, there's houses.
And then she forgets something.
And then she goes away and comes back to explain more things that I wasn't paying attention to.
Now, here's the important part, and this is why I put this on the OneNote. I said, who was she, and did she matter?
Oh, yes, she does, but not really. They show her later, I think. Isn't she part of isn't she like the
I don't know,
the wife of the king or something like,
sure,
or the
that's
emperor?
What she is. Yeah,
I think so. I believe they show her on the screen later on in the movie.
She does not matter, though. Yes, you might be correct.
Yeah, I think she doesn't matter. She is not centrifugal part of the plot, but I think they wanted to pay her more, so they gave her more lines.
Yeah, Corey, do you remember who she was?
No. The main impact of that at the beginning was they're trying to one-up Star Wars, because instead of having the words scroll down the screen, they're like, we'll just read it off for you.
That's lazy.
They
and then the lady forgot to read the whole teleprompter.
No.
They faded her out and faded her back in.
Obviously, the teleprompter got unplugged. It got unplugged, and then they plugged it back in, and then she's like, oh, wait, no, I got more.
And they couldn't re-record that line again.
The power went out for a little bit, so they're like, oh, no, fix it. They plug it back in, and then she's back on screen.
Yeah, and they couldn't re-record the lines because that's expensive.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So they just had someone do a cut, fade in, PowerPoint presentation.
So, exactly, with no visuals. Just explaining
it was a floating
things.
head visual.
Yeah. So they explained that there's a spice that controls the universe, and it's on this planet. And there's an emperor of the universe. I'm pretty sure that was a thing.
Sure.
Then they show the emperor talking with some sort of...
You don't want to touch on why this...
Oh, wait,
this
hold on,
spice is
Richard.
important?
Hold on.
No, I don't.
Before you get
Not
there,
at all.
spoilers for 1984 movie.
Oh, yeah, this is true. The entirety
If
of
you didn't
is a
see in the
spoiler.
title the Dune episode being there and that we're talking about the 1984 movie, we'll be spoiling it today.
Yeah,
To be
that's fair.
fair, it's probably not the best spoilers anyway. I'm explaining things completely wrong, and that's okay. Because the Emperor talks to this giant floating blob thing,
Yep.
and it's important to know that the floating blob thing, or whatever mafioso group that he was part of, said that they need to kill this kid. Well, kid. He's an adult.
Okay.
Okay. Now, backstory a little bit, because the spice is important because it lets you teleport, I guess. Kind of. Sort of. That wasn't really clear because it's part of space travel, I guess. But it only gets shown like once in the entire thing.
It makes people live longer, and it allows for wormhole-based transportation.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. That was not clear.
Yep.
It probably explained it when I wasn't paying attention. Probably Floating Head Girl explained it. Was not paying attention.
She
This
said,
is why
oh, excuse me. The spice? yeah, but the spice, it's also for worm teleportation and other stuff.
Yep.
And people also eat it. I don't know.
That's why she went away and came back. She's like, oh, by the way, I forgot.
No,
I
what
have
you,
to
what you
explain the
heard
spice.
when she disappears, you're a... And then she came back and she had spice all in her nose.
That explains a lot.
Yeah.
So most of the story, the actual parts of the story happen on this Dune planet, Arrakis, because we went over. I nearly forgot it again. But it has to
Atreides,
do.
yeah.
No,
Planet
Atreides
Atreides.
is one of the families.
Yep.
And the assassination plot is to kill Paul Atreides, who is the son of the king or general dude of the Atreides family, who is this somehow just savior of everything because he's a mix of bloodlines. And one of the female, the mom is like part of this like psychic group of witches, and the dad is this general guy, and it wasn't supposed to be a son that was born. It was supposed to be a daughter. I remember that.
Yeah.
And the main thing is there have been many sons within this line of crossbreeding, and they all died because they tried to drink the waters of life or something like that, and they died due to that.
Cool.
Except this was just men in general.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was not clear.
Hey, Corey, good job.
Yeah. But the whole reason as to why this guy has to die, though, is because that's floating space blob thing told the Emperor, who apparently is taking suggestions from random space attendants.
Right. Mafia people.
Hey, just a suggestion.
No, that's it was all clad in black people with the giant space blob. They're clearly mafia.
You guys really hated that blob thing's mouth.
I did not like that thing at all.
Shot lasers.
It was a butthole with a flap.
Yeah.
But the king was told, or the emperor, was told he must die so that whatever their whole telepathic nonsense about spice going on is stabilized. And that was the whole reason why the families were set up. So one family was told that they'll be given something, and then Atreides was told that, oh, we'll give you guys soldiers so that you can fight the other family. But then they told the other family that, don't worry, once Atreides fights you, we're going to kill off
Oh, that was the
House Atreides.
Hukka people.
Okay.
That was the weird, messed up psycho dude that inflates himself and floats all over the place.
Yes. And the whole reason why they had to get rid of that other family, which is the inflatable flying weird man,
weird sick face man,
was because the native population was starting to take control of the spice slightly more.
Right.
And the Emperor did not like that.
I hope you're enjoying this explanation so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the people that live
gonna get worse.
the people that live on the Dune planet are called Fremen, and they have blue eyes.
Yep.
And
Why do they have blue eyes, Richard?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
I think it has to do with them being
They got
all
spice
around the
eyes.
spice all the time.
Because spice is everywhere.
And yep, exactly.
Yep.
The spice melange.
It's everywhere on this one planet in the universe where
Also,
spice is the only thing.
This watching this movie also made Richard understand this South Park
yes.
skit about what Tom Brady and.
So yeah, there's an episode.
We don't need to explain the South Park episode. Just keep
Either
going,
way,
Richard.
There's a lot of whispering, and
Yeah.
that's the weird thing about this movie is constantly there's inner dialogue going on where they're whispering constantly.
They're inner thoughts, basically. Yeah.
Yes, which is just really unnerving. But
Okay,
anyway,
so we have an assassination plot. There's the Hukka people. We
Right.
have the Atreides people.
Paul.
Yeah.
Dad.
And there's some kind of subplot going on with the Emperor and the floating bag of juice.
Yes.
And
Okay, and then they all go to the planet Dune.
all of them. Yep.
Arrakis. Sorry. The Paul
name
goes
Dune.
to there. I'm guessing to get away from the assassination plot. I don't remember that part.
Okay.
And they go to take over the planet, basically, which they do. They get rid of everybody except for the natives, and then the Hukka people come and take over everything, basically. And then Paul and his mom get away from the Hukka people, and go in with the natives. And then Paul becomes basically the leader of the natives, basically, and teaches them how to fight with these special sound weapons that are weird and
Ha-cha-cha-cha.
yeah, they
So
yell a lot.
They don't. That's one of the things they don't explain a lot is the voice, because that's the first thing they mention when it comes up is like Atreides gets commanded to do something, and his like, oh no, she's using the voice.
Oh right.
Because he had that
Paul.
whole like hand in the box.
Yes, that was a whole
situation.
thing too, where
It was a test.
it was a mental fortitude test.
Okay, so Paul Atreides and his mom have gone to the free people,
Fremen.
the Fremen, and he is now apparently just suddenly their leader.
That's pretty much what happens.
Okay, and then what's after that?
He
Also, yeah, so
trains
using
them.
voice weapons with
He trains them to use voice weapons.
And also finds out they're all sitting on massive reservoirs of water.
which
Life.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just keep going.
Yep. they people drink. Whatchamacallit. At some point, one of the witches dies, and then the mom of Paul replaces her.
No. The witch dies because the mum is
If
replacing
you've
her.
not figured
That's
it
fine.
out, this is a crazy movie.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's still the basis of what I said.
Mom witch have replaced other witch
Other
that
witch.
live with Fremens.
Yes.
And then other
Fremen witch.
Yes. Okay. So now mom is Fremen witch.
Yep.
Paul is leader man.
Leader of Fremen.
Yes. They have voice powers and weapons.
Yes, everybody gets trained, and all of a sudden, everybody knows how to use voice powers for some
Okay.
reason. Then they have a ceremony where they go up top, and there's worms on the planet, by the way, giant worms
Uh-huh.
that throughout the entire film is clued into having something to do with the spice. In fact, like 3 or 4 different times, Paul has an inner monologue about how worms have to do with spice, and he has visions about all of this stuff with worms and spice. Either way, ceremony happens. They go up, and Paul, this is the weirdest thing, I tell you. He like takes a plate of, they summon one of the worms basically using vibrational stuff, and then the worms have plates. And what he does is he takes this like separator thing and shoves it into the side of the worm and separates it, clearly making the worm very much in pain, but doesn't throw Paul off as he's doing the whole thing.
No, so he separates the plate so that
He
the
can
plate
jump up
can
on the thing.
climb. So yeah, it's
I got
a
that.
lever, and then the pain makes the worm turn away from the source of pain, which drags Paul up so he doesn't have to climb.
Oh, okay. Then,
This is why we have Corey as the number 2 explaining.
yeah. I didn't remember that part, to be
Richard
honest.
watched a different movie than you.
I think so.
You also missed a weirdly important part where when Paul's mum undergoes the whole water of life thing, she's currently pregnant with Paul's
Oh yeah, I
soon-to-be
forgot
sister,
about the sister.
who then ages and is birthed rapidly because of the effects of the water of life, and is born as one of those witchy ladies.
Not helping with an explanation. I'm just saying she's a great character.
Yeah,
she's a
sure.
great character.
She's really weird and creepy in the movie.
Yeah,
and she speaks with a weirdly soft adult female voice.
And very creepily.
Yeah. And just kind of stares at the screen a lot.
She's the Gollum of the movie.
Yeah. But also has like superpowers.
Okay. So we have voice powers. We have creepy sister. We have
Worms.
Super Paul Atreides learning to ride worms.
Yeah. So he's riding a worm. That was the ceremony.
Okay.
And then after that, basically, he riles up all the natives to be like, we need to take back our land. And there's like a Braveheart moment where he gives a Braveheart speech. And they're all like, yeah. And there's this giant column with where the water is, kind of like it's a tunnel area. And there's a lot of people underneath that planet, which is weird.
Okay.
And then basically they all get all the worms and ride them into a final battle against the Haka people.
Well, and then
it's basically what they do. They take back the planet, and then they basically disrupt the entire ecosystem of the rest of the universe because they end up killing the inflatable man.
Yeah.
They disrupt Sting. That was weird too.
Also, Sting was in the movie.
Yes, Sting. Yes, the singer Sting was in the movie.
Now we'll drop that information on you.
I completely forgot about that.
Not as Sting, there was a whole kind of as Sting.
Also, Patrick Stewart was in the movie.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, there was this whole subplot with the whole Haka family thing about how brother, and then the Sting was this really, really psycho weird dude throughout the entire thing.
With the heart plug, yeah.
Paul keeps seeing him as though he was the person who's going to kill him, I guess. But either way, at the end, they randomly just have a duel where it's Paul versus Sting. And they're like, and then they basically play mental games with each other by talking to each other. And then Sting gets stabbed and dies.
Uh-huh.
And then basically Paul Atreides takes over the universe.
Corey, would you like to add anything to this explanation?
Paul kind of gashes the earth open after he beats Sting.
So
he cracks that.
Voice weapons.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And basically their family then now owns Dune and therefore controls
all
the
two
universe.
of them.
Yeah.
Or I guess three of them.
Yeah, and then
he's technically
raining.
part of the...
Yeah, and then it starts raining.
Oh,
yeah.
right. Then the water comes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads to the most important things, it never rains on Dune.
Yeah,
right.
And that was the whole thing, was that...
On the whole planet.
After his sort of coming of age ceremony with the worm riding, he actually undergoes the water of life ceremony as well, which no man had ever lived through. Like, they all die. And he survives it somehow, and then that allows him to commune with the worms, essentially. They kind of have this moment where like 5 worms show up and they're all kind of like singing over Paul Atreides.
I forgot about that part too.
Yeah, at the end of the movie, after Paul wins the duel, they have this like whole like, oh, he's the chosen one, and it starts raining.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's a pretty complete explanation. How'd you guys like the movie?
Yeah,
it was ridiculous. I didn't understand half of it.
And if you didn't understand half of my brother's explanation, we'll go watch the movie and see if you
now
do better.
Seen a quarter of that movie.
Yes. And I'll correct one thing. The House Harkonnen is...
That's the guy, the Haka people.
Yes. Yeah.
Harkonnen, yes.
He likes
also,
with the inflatable man.
The narrator was the daughter of the Emperor.
There you go.
Still did nothing.
Did we ever see the daughter?
Yes, she was the
at the end of the
narrator
movie.
at the very beginning.
You saw her at the end too.
Now you also saw her almost directly after she narrates.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was
on
like
the side?
Yes.
Anytime you saw the Emperor, she was always
right next to
like close to him.
Yeah, that's why. Like at the end where they have that whole duel thing.
Why did she narrate it? She had no important part.
Like I said, they wanted to pay her more, so they gave her more lines.
Anyway, she probably was the best reader of the.
Probably.
We like your voice. Can you announce this movie? So yeah, how'd you guys like the movie? So Richard thought it was crazy.
I just didn't understand half of what was going on, and it kind of reminded me of basically like a normal 80s sci-fi like weird movie that didn't exactly have the best writer.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, had that movie just been longer,
screenplay writer.
Yeah. Had the movie just been longer, I think it would have been better. But there was just a lot I guess my biggest beef with the movie was all of the internal dialogue. It was just too much. Like, it just muddied everything.
Well, Corey, real quick before you get to whether you like it. Speaking of, you wish it was longer. The reboot of the movie, which is coming out, is going to be a 2-parter,
Right?
And it's also 20 minutes longer than the original movie.
Part 1 is.
Yes, part 1 is. So it does take longer and explains. Well, you guys will see. Corey, how did you like the movie?
I thought it was fun. It definitely has those sort of like original sci-fi kind of Star Wars vibes where you're like, this is a whole universe, and it feels very original and like it's its own thing.
Yeah, it definitely feels original.
It just feels like it was a little soft-boiled, like it was missing a little more time in the oven. And it kind of oddly felt like who's that singer again that was in Labyrinth?
David Bowie.
Yeah, it felt like David Bowie should have been in there
instead of Sting.
Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
No, I feel like they could have had both of them.
I was upset, honestly. I felt like Sting should have been singing more and being crazy less.
No,
well,
he just
also,
wanted to be a crazy guy.
What was this the movie that the entire soundtrack was done by? I can't remember anymore. There was something like soundtracked by this person, and I don't remember who it was.
I was gonna say that would be Highlander, and that was all done by Freddie Mercury and Queen.
Okay,
that's what you're thinking.
No. There was something similar for Dune too.
Okay, maybe. I have no idea.
Well, Corey, you keep talking about things while I look this up.
I feel like it was a good movie, but it wasn't a great movie. It's kind of like one of those. It's a good cult classic movie, but I don't think it's a movie I'd be interested in watching frequently.
The music was by Toto.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yes, you are correct.
That's what was weird. While we watched
there was
like
maybe
music
one
by
or
Toto.
2 tracks that were definitely Toto-y, but the rest was like
there was
weird.
no pop music at all during the entire.
No.
Yeah. Anything else you guys want to say?
The thing that I was astounded by is that you could, and this is I think the thing that bugged me, but also was very David Lynchy about the movie was the whole internal dialogue thing. But
the spies,
yeah,
the spies.
But that just has to. I enjoy a lot more of David Lynch's other stuff by comparison to this.
It's definitely like
Too
in the
campy.
books where you have the person like thinking their own thoughts, and then when they translate the movie, they're like, "Get rid of that. We don't need them thinking thoughts. Just have them act the thoughts.
Go show them having those thoughts."
Yeah. And personally, I enjoy the movie, and watching it. I don't know, like this is my 5th time watching it. It definitely makes more sense each time you rewatch it. But the one thing that I've blacked out of my memory every single time is the weird, creepy juice monster that's like in the spice cage, and I'm like, I don't remember it ever. I never like even probably in the future. And now there's a podcast that's reminding me of this. I will never remember that. I will never remember weird, goopy creature that shoots lasers out of his mouth. It's strange.
I guess the weird thing for me is that that thing shows up later and it's just floating in the sky.
Yeah, and it's just basically a warp drive.
Yeah.
Well, they're the
There's a
navigators.
Space guild. Yeah.
I think that's what they're called. They're called the navigators, and they're essentially people that have had so much spice that it's changed their body.
They're also older than every other thing that's there.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Well, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that explanation. I most certainly didn't. And and I'll admit, if you made it through like that explanation, you can make through the movie. Because the movie is just as convoluted and packs way too much information into it. We are going to be, and you can actually do this with us. If you want to watch the original movie and then come with us to watch the reboot, we will be watching the reboot in a couple days.
And we'll see if it clarifies anything for us.
It is on HBO Max. We're not sponsored, but it is on HBO. And, go ahead and watch it. And let's see if you can get a more defined explanation from the reboot than with the original. Because it's always fun to, look at these older movies. I mean, not that, 40 years old. But look at the original movies and see how the new ones kind of reinterpret the story. So if you are on YouTube, you could just keep watching. You'll see the part 2 right now. If you're on the podcast, tune in on Friday for our update, our part 2 for the reboot.
Yeah, we're gonna do a bonus.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, everybody who's watching. Obviously, we appreciate you. You can find us at anywhere at Generally Casual anything. You can email us at generallycasual@gmail.com.
Yeah.
And
even hitting whatever is the like button and whatever is the subscribe button, it helps us out a lot.
absolutely. Well, we'll see you in a sandy second. Hello and welcome to part 2. And for everybody else who's on YouTube,
Dune.
this is a part 2. And then if you're tuning into our second podcast, well, hello and welcome back to
Dune.
Generally Casual.
Michael, if you're tuning,
I am Michael, one of your
Duning.
co-hosts, and this is Richard and Corey.
Again.
And we're going over Dune Part 2 after having watched... You guys suck. After having watched the new movie, the reboot movie.
we watched the original, the 1980 something or other. We found
4.
more sand in our pants, so we had to throw in HBO, which if you're watching this right now when we release it, which is today, but then for you,
This
it
is not
will
the
still
previous one.
potentially be on HBO Max for free, unless it isn't, because then
should
it's
be.
gone.
A lot of them stick around for a couple months.
It's really good.
Or at least
I
a month.
enjoyed it a lot. Spoiler alert, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
much better.
sure.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, so for
I
anybody
actually
who
understood this movie.
for anybody who hasn't watched it yet, you should now know that it's a part 1, which was a little tricky. Like they didn't really release that in the trailer.
no, but
When you watch
at
the
beginning
movie,
of the
though,
movie,
it goes
says part 1 right at the beginning.
And so you know, in case you've watched the original with us, and now you're tuning in for the new one, this covers a little under half of the original movie.
Which is a bit confusing that our part 2 is the part 1 of the movie.
Yeah, but if we don't focus on that and we just keep on moving past it,
Yeah.
it won't be confusing at all.
Alright.
Anyways, there's probably going to be a part 3 when the next movie comes out, but we want to do this now because
Yeah.
it's fresh in our brains, and you're probably looking for something along this content.
And we really enjoyed it. I think what's interesting about this movie, and you guys will probably agree, because I'm just going to put the words in your mouth right now, but it explains a lot of the implications as to why things happen much, much, much better. Yes?
The main difference between this movie and the original is that this movie treats its audience with intelligence. It says, my audience can determine things on their own. I don't have to overly
And
explain everything.
With that, it totally makes sense that 80s movie coming out previously, like 5 years after Star Wars came out, Star Wars did not a lot of explaining.
No.
But most everything was like a human, or it was a very obvious alien. And in that movie, they were like, oh, no. Star Wars is very straightforward. This movie is very complicated. So we have to explain literally everything. And it's dense. It's just a dense movie. And it makes us dense watching it.
Yes. Because their over explanation made it a lot more confusing.
It's just saturated.
Versus, like I said, in this movie, they don't overly explain. They
Explaining
basically
it like
only
coffee.
explain to you what you need to know at the moment.
It's like your coffee is mostly milk. Instead, it's
Milk with a side of coffee.
Yeah, it's milk with a side of coffee.
inject
This
a little bit of
movie
coffee.
was whatever perfect combination of coffee you want. If it's black coffee, it's your perfect black coffee. If it's whatever mix you want, this is what this movie is. It's just saturated enough where you can do your own imagination for the explanations.
Well, it allows the characters to be much more complex. And that's one of the strongest things that I have to add to this is for this movie, each of the characters that are key characters for the story have more of a feeling of growth and development. And like the fact that Paul Atreides, he actually feels like a human being
And
that is going through difficult scenarios opposed to, yeah, I can do this. Okay, yeah. I just found about this like 5 minutes ago. My dad died. But on the other hand, I'm in the desert now, so I'm really removed from that. So I don't really care.
I don't care.
This, Paul Atreides is like, okay, this is a really weird scenario. Why are we going through this? Okay, I've lived this life. You can get the whole like rich boy vibe from him. He doesn't really have fear of the world. And then he goes to this new space and is like, oh, I'm out of my depth.
But still shows him being a very skilled individual.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the the stupid giant like what, the needle tracer thing that
Oh,
almost killed him in the
yeah.
original movie was like ginormous. It was like a big tube.
Yeah.
This one was actually
A
the
little,
size
like,
of a
bee.
mosquito,
Like a fly,
and then he grabs it out of the air without stabbing himself.
Yeah.
And like all the feats he achieves in this new movie are much more, I would say, much bigger of a feat than they were in the original movie.
Yeah,
Well, and it's because they made it subtle.
Yeah.
Like they didn't try and point it out. They're just like, he is just adept at a
Yeah.
lot of things.
well, I was gonna say this movie makes
His
him
ways are
seem
ours.
like more than human, if that makes sense. And the way that the story is presented makes sense because they actually go into the backstory of the witches. Very loose.
Bene Gesserit?
The
Yes,
Bene Gesserit,
that-
or
those
they were
people.
referred to as witches a couple times. That is much more interesting because they explain the backstory in this. And as a spoiler to whoever hasn't watched the movie yet, go and watch it. You've had your chance. The fact that the Bene Gesserit are sort of shown to be this syndicate that lies behind everything and is
independent,
manipulating the events is so much more interesting. And the fact that instead of just going, yeah, we've tried to make this guy, but we can't. In this, it's like, well, this is the end goal of the Bene Gesserit. They're trying to move things behind the scenes, and by doing that, they've put their own cells in every aspect of government, and they've all along the lines been trying to make the perfect being to help control that all.
You know, with that, it's also interesting to note that in this new movie, while doing everything Corey just said, they also make it known that if Paul is not the one they're trying to make, then he'll just go there and fail.
Yeah.
And they're setting him up, be like, hey, we've planted everything that you need to succeed, but if you're not the one, you're going to die. And I like that the way that they set that up. Plus the voice, the way they use the voice is so much better. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I can't really explain it without you seeing it. So if you've seen it, you'll know exactly how cool it is in this new movie.
But that was such a nice thing, was that how the Bene Gesserit are sort of like, it's less of a new thing and more of a, like, these
We've been
guys
around.
have existed for a very, very long time. They've had their eyes on this planet for a very long time. And they essentially sent out Bene Gesserit to spread the word. Hey, look, in the future, this guy's going to appear with his mum, and he's going to be your savior.
Yeah.
And I think that was why there was the biggest conflict between the head Bene Gesserit lady who worked for the Emperor and Paul Atreides' mum, because essentially Paul Atreides' mum worked outside of the Bene Gesserit to have her son when she wasn't supposed to.
She was supposed to have a daughter, yeah.
And the fact that she showed up with Paul accelerates the Bene Gesserit's plan when it wasn't a certainty that he was the one.
And if you haven't caught on yet, we can explain this much better because this movie was much better at explaining things.
Well, I was gonna say also a key differentiator
We actually
is
understood what we watched.
Yeah.
we just talked about the Bene Gesserit. In the original movie, it seemed like the Emperor was the one making all the decisions,
Yeah.
and it had nothing to do with the Bene Gesserit.
They were
at
not
all.
their own entity. Yeah.
And as we kind of pointed out while we were watching the movie, we don't know how the Bene Gesserit actually work. Are they a good organization? Are they a bad organization? It doesn't even make it clear in the film. It's like they're just there, and there's a prophecy associated with that.
They have a
but we
goal.
don't know if that's a good goal or a bad goal.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing too, is like, we don't know if it's an actual prophecy because multiple times it's kind of alluded that that prophecy was created in order to make conquering that planet easier.
Yeah.
Or maintaining control over that planet.
And
Well, and they also kind of show like differentiating of the Bene Gesserit. Some of them look a little bit more sinister. Some of them
Yeah.
look kind of like better.
before we dive too deep on the Bene Gesserit,
Yep.
I also want to talk about the other guilds that were there because they're also very different, like the Harkonnens being the main antagonists in the movie.
Harkonnens.
Harkonnens. Harkonnens.
Because they pronounce it completely different in the first movie than
yes.
they do in this movie.
Because they only hearken back onto it.
And instead of looking like these weird, like mutated people with giant inflatable rafts as bellies,
That's just one of them.
In this one, they look much more futuristic. Like, they've actually fused with technology.
They're like pale utilitarians.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have, like, lots of body armor on, not being overly produced as, like, individuals.
They still did give off that like mafia or like corporatist vibe, definitely.
And that's what it looked like. It's just like they were very, very wealthy, and a lot of what they were like, a lot of what we see with them was like what's it like, large fleets of ships.
Oh yeah.
And all their ships are massive, and they have a lot of firepower, and they can really like bring anyone to war and like destroy all of them. While the Atreides really felt like a very like upright, loyal type of characters that were very similar to like someone who serves under a king. Like, and they're like, for my king, I will be loyal forever.
They did a really good job at showing multiple times throughout the introduction phase of the movie how honor is a very important thing to the Atreides. Like, they're all about doing the right thing. And even if they know that it's kind of like the epitome of lawful good. Like, they're doing the right thing because that is their code. And regardless of if it causes problems, they're still going to do that right thing.
They're also very much about people. Like, that was one of the interesting things that I thought was different about the Atreides is they specifically talk about their strategy going to this planet and taking over stewardship of Arrakis by comparison to the Harkonnen.
Yeah.
They said the Harkonnen are basically treating these people like slaves, and they want to kill them off. They don't want to deal with any of the natives from this planet, versus the Atreides are like, we want to create an alliance with them. We want to make sure that they understand it's still their planet. We're just being there to steward what's going on, with the bigger political structure in mind.
And I think the biggest thing that kind of showed that was that there's a scene where, like you mentioned, Paul Atreides catches the dart robot thing, and they find the assassin, and the Harkonnens have entombed this guy into the wall. And you can kind of see this moment where it's like the Harkonnens do not value life.
Yeah.
Whereas the Atreides do. And like, I think it's one point where the first time you see one of the worms come towards a spice extractor, and Paul Atreides' dad is literally like, screw the spice, we've got to save these people.
Yeah, how many people are on that extractor? Yeah, we have 21 souls. Okay, we need to get them all on these firefly thingies.
A quick note for that is I love, since I had seen the movie before and we all watched it together, it was quite amazing to hear both of these two's reaction to the spice extractor thing with the balloons. Both of them were like, whoa!
Oh, yeah. That was super cool.
As giant balloons carry this giant like piece of machinery like away.
It was just funny to me because it comes in and it's like, oh, it can fly. And then you see this big thing, you're like, how's that going to pick that up? And it's like, I can't pick it up until now. And it just goes, and it's like, now I have more.
Now I'm a weather balloon that also carries heavy things.
Yeah.
So that was very entertaining. I, at multiple times, probably annoyed both of you guys because I was just having, like, I was going off the charts excited with all the spaceship designs and all. Like, it's just really sci-fi, like modern sci-fi, like cool factor.
And they show you the grand scope of everything. There's
How big
constantly
everything,
size differentials and everything.
And done really well.
Yeah.
And
the size of ships, the size of people by comparison to the ships, it's insane.
I'll admit, in the original, they also did a good job really trying to show it, but I think they were limited just
by technology.
Yeah, by technology at the time. And with Corey's point, is they don't overproduce any of the ship designs.
They have a very, I want to say, like, controlled use of CGI.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's very easy to go too in depth with CGI, and
like Star Wars 1,
stupid.
2, and 3.
No, I was actually going to mention the Hobbit movies because they had an over-reliance on CGI, and it costed them. And obviously, they don't have the same sort of reliance on practical effects in this because a lot of the people look quite human-like.
Mm-hmm.
But it shows that they thought about when they needed to use CGI because of scale or because of like limitation of technology, and then when they didn't and they did use props instead, and it comes off a lot better.
Yeah. Now we're kind of getting to, I guess, the end of our explanation, but I have two of my favorite moments from the movie. I don't know if you guys have any that are floating around on your head or anything else you guys want to talk about. Spaceships. And because Corey was touching on that, I really felt like it was necessary for me to talk about my two absolute favorite moments from the movie. Number one was all the Fremen's quotes to Paul Atreides. One of my favorite quotes also in the book was, he will know our ways as if born with them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
a whole still suit thing.
Yeah, like where he already put his still suit on correctly, which is another moment from the original movie.
Yeah.
But all of the quotes to Paul Atreides was kind of in relation to the Bene Gesserit, saying, hey, we already set it up for you, which is like the mass people going, hey, there's that guy. He's what prophecies. But also in addition to that, every single one-on-one interaction that Paul had with the Fremen was like, I recognize you.
And it makes more sense because of the way that they actually explained it.
And he's constantly doing research as well.
Yeah.
Like,
that was super cool.
He
had the little video, holograph video thing.
Constantly learning about him. And just from watching, like, this is the way they walk in the sand. And then he knows it. And he didn't ever really learn how to put a still suit on. He's just like, this is the right way to do it. And all of that was really impressive overall to give the feel to Paul that he is the prophesized one. But then anti that, he was constantly going like, what did you do to me? Like, why are you setting me up to do this? He kept assaulting his mom going, hey, you have literally put the universe's pressures on my shoulders, and I am not what you are trying to make me out to be. These are your actions. You've done this to these people. I am not doing this. And slowly over the movie, he's like, oh my God, maybe I am that person. And just there's several visions, which leads me to my second favorite part, that impart how big he is in the story without him going, I'm just naturally good at everything.
Yeah.
The vision with you guys already talked about the part where the worm comes up to eat the extractor, the spice extractor. The first time you see it, Paul just looks like he's out.
He's out.
He's been
he's
hallucinating.
kneeled down and he's just
But they don't show anything else. He's just walking around, and then he stops at the spice extractor and just looks up. And it looks like he's looking at parts of the spice extractor that are broken. And then he gets pulled away. And then you actually see what he saw. And you see, a little while in the movie, I think 10 minutes go by, and then you see what he was experiencing in the vision. And you watch the same events, him walking around. But this time, what he sees and sees these future images pop up about what he's to do. Seeing, a guy who's supposed to die, that's him, but not him. And, seeing Zendaya's character and him meeting her.
There's a lot more metaphor.
Yes, it was really good.
You mentioned as well, I think you were saying how it was confusing because it seems as though, the future that he was seeing was not actually the future that would happen, but at the same time, it's supposed to be like a prediction. But I think it did a really good job of inserting a metaphor better because it was he technically does die then. Because Paul Atreides, as he knows it at that point of the movie, does in fact die. Because he's I am no longer Paul Atreides of this planet. I now have to do
You're saying
with
because he
Dune.
killed the other dude.
Yeah, and that's because it was basically said, the quote that was surrounding that battle he has with this guy was basically if you kill another, you are now dead.
Yeah. Well, and what I found interesting is that they, the guy who he fights, he's shown in a vision sitting at a bonfire and saying I will show you the ways of the desert type of thing. And technically that interaction is that. But
it opens him up to allowing the Fremen to
a Fremen, yeah. Which is interesting, and it's done visually well.
And the vision he has in the tent with his mom, you don't quite see you see basically what's going to be occurring in part 2 occur, and him just completely losing it. And I love that moment because unlike the original where he's I guess that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I guess I'll go do it.
Yeah.
This one was like, he completely was trying to throw away that vision because he didn't want it.
Well, they do an excellent job of showing the scale of what everything implies, because he mentions in that tent, he's like, I'm going to be at the head of a holy war. Because that's essentially what this is all kicking off, because spice is like such an important integral thing to this entire civilization that's
Everyone.
spacefaring,
Yeah.
and it affects everyone.
Even the Fremen. Like,
Yeah.
it's important to everyone.
Well, and what was interesting is they do a good job of showing that it's kind of like ayahuasca to them, essentially. Is it's like this spiritual medium that they use to like involve themselves with their way of life.
yeah.
So I will say the one thing that was made blatantly clear to me that I absolutely loved in this movie was that they showed the spice in the air. They showed where it is. They
looked
showed
really pretty,
what it
too.
is. And they showed how Paul gets affected by it.
They make it seem like he's got an allergy at first.
Well, and they do say that pretty much. But the main thing that's really interesting is that they show why the extraction is important. They show these giant things and they're just running across the sand. And it's because literally it's just embedded in the sand and kind of floats around and everything like that. It's very cool. And they don't exactly put as much emphasis on the spice as they do in the original. It's not. They just say it's a very important thing.
And they don't even quite, they kind of say, it's required for space travel, but they don't like fully describe it
No.
and all of its uses.
And
They
that's
just go-
okay.
And they also don't show giant potato with a butthole mouth.
But
That
they
is
talk
true.
about them. And
They
go,
talk about them,
They
but-
they plot the, and I love that they describe them going, they are the ones who plot the course through the universe. They are not the ones who are literally going, would you like to travel? Blah, blah. Okay, you're traveling now.
But yeah, I think it was very well done.
Yeah.
And then my other favorite thing is the fact that Duncan was actually a character.
Yeah, Duncan.
Yeah. Versus in the show, it's like you see him twice, basically.
all-
I'm your friend. Okay, bye.
I kind of wanted to do this episode, but I'll probably save it for when we do Dune Part 3, Part 2, Part 2, Part 3.
Yeah.
Is going through and comparing the characters from the original to this one and seeing how much better, not because of the actors, but how much better their story is told just through the story alone. Because like Duncan and all of these characters, I forgot what the guy's name who trained Paul.
Yeah, Thanos.
Yeah, yeah,
The guy who plays Thanos.
Yeah. Is all of the
Cable,
characters?
sorry, Cable. He's
Yeah,
Cable.
all of their characters were told out a lot better.
Well, so I know it goes kind of against the story of it all, but my hope and dream for part 2 of Dune is that Duncan Idaho just like you see him die in that moment, and I just hope that somehow there's some magical healing property of spice, and you just see Jason Momoa get up with his like multiple stab wound riddled body and just scoop sand into it, rub it off, and then walk away. Like he shows up some other time. Duncan, I thought you died. I did, but I rubbed some spice on it.
The spice melange.
I put the spice melange in my belly.
I'm like well-seasoned barbecue meat now. I'm all spiced up.
Yeah, but I get.
Oh, also, I love that the Emperor is not really that involved in the new movie
at
either.
all. You don't.
They-
you don't see the Emperor. You see
don't
the Emperor's entourage.
aid.
Yeah.
And the whole reason that the Emperor is brought up is other than the fact that obviously he's the Emperor, and they require the Emperor's guard for the Harkonnen.
Which they show they're a
the
very
tooth and throat
like
singing
elite.
Yeah.
was awesome.
They're a very elite set of gods. Like they're much more important than what they felt like in the first movie, because the Harkonnens are like rough, housey, kind of like barbarian feeling. But these elite gods, like they go and they mess things up.
Did you see like that they really didn't talk about the ritual they were going through when you see them? But there was men strung upside down, bleeding into like lines, like very like the like Guardians of the Galaxy, the Kree like moment where he smashes that dude's head, the blood comes down, he's like, now wipe it on me. And they did the same thing. It was like they sacrificed 10 people and then they used that blood to wipe it on their forehead, and there's a guy like tooth and throat singing words at them. I was like, this is much better of a setup to really explain what the Emperor is like really old ancient traditions, while the other guilds are like, why are we doing that? But there was still like, well, the Emperor said it, we'll follow.
Yep.
So I think overall we all really enjoyed this over the original.
Oh,
the
yeah.
original is a classic cult movie. I think with all of its problems, it's still a very in-depth telling of Dune, but I think this new series is really going to take the cake.
I think the biggest differentiation is I watched the 1980s movie and was like, okay, cool, I'm done. Whereas I watched this new movie and I'm like, okay, I feel like reading the book now. Like, I feel much more involved in the universe and interested in it. Whereas previously I was just kind of done.
Yeah.
Oh, and then lastly, obviously, as kind of, if you've read any review of the movie at all, it is beautifully shot.
It's really pretty.
The cinematography is really, really pretty. Everything like that.
Yeah. Well, Corey, you want to take us out?
Yeah, once again, rate, hit the like button, review us, comment, let us know what you think. If you haven't seen the movie yet, go see it and then tell us what you think. And you can do that at Generally Casual on whatever platform you're on.
Yeah. Listen to us on a long car ride, or a short car ride, or over progress,
Or a long walk outside.
or while your friends are trapped in a room with you. Anyways, we'll see you all for when the next Dune movie comes out. Bye, everybody.